On a night when Jimmy Kimmel Live was supposed to be just another joke-filled Hollywood talk show, President Donald Trump and his daughter Ivanka strutted onto the stage like they owned the place. Until Jimmy Kimmel looked them dead in the eyes and unleashed the one forbidden question that shattered their decades-long lie, turning the show into the most humiliating and jaw-dropping public takedown the Trump dynasty has ever suffered. Tonight, the famous ABC studio was packed with an audience that sat unusually quiet, almost nervous, as they waited for the show to begin. For weeks, the country had been buzzing with whispers and heated debates. The rumor was shocking that young Baron Trump, the youngest son of President Donald Trump and First Lady Melania Trump, might not actually be Melania's biological child. Instead, many people were saying, and even some public figures had hinted, that Barron was really Ivanka Trump's son. Because of that, the tension in the studio was thick right from the moment people walked in. The lights in the studio dimmed just a little as Jimmy Kimmel stepped to the edge of the stage with that familiar half-smile on his face. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice cutting through the usual opening cheers. "Tonight, we have two very special guests. Please welcome the President of the United States, Donald Trump, and his daughter, Ivanka Trump." The applause started, but it died down fast. The whole studio went dead quiet. Trump walked out first, chin up, shoulders back, doing that signature confident stride like he owned the place. Ivanka followed right behind him, blonde hair perfect, wearing a calm smile that looked a little too stiff. She gave a small wave to the crowd, but her eyes didn't quite match the smile. They sat down on the couch. Jimmy waited a second, letting the silence sit there before he spoke. "It's great to have both of you here tonight. Let's start easy. How's family life treating you these days?" Trump jumped right in, voice loud and sure. "Family life is fantastic, Jimmy. The best. We're a very close family. Always have been. These ridiculous rumors going around, total fake news from desperate Democrats who can't win any other way. Sad." He laughed a little, the kind of laugh that usually gets the crowd going. But tonight, it landed flat. A few people clapped politely, but most just stared. Jimmy nodded slowly, like he was thinking it over. Then he turned to the big screen behind them. "You know, Mr. President, people have been talking a lot about Barron lately. Let me show you something real quick." Before Trump could say another word, a short clip started playing. It was old footage, but crystal clear. There was Ivanka, years younger, holding a tiny newborn Barron in her arms. Her face was glowing, eyes shining as she looked down at the baby and whispered softly, "My little boy, my beautiful little boy." The studio went even quieter. Trump's head snapped toward the screen. His face changed in a split second. "Turn that off," he barked, cutting his hand through the air. "That's taken completely out of context. Jimmy, come on. We're not here for this nonsense." Ivanka didn't say anything at first. She just sat there, staring at the frozen image on the screen. For a moment, her perfect smile slipped. She glanced sideways at her father, and in that one quick look, you could see it. Real worry, like she knew the dam was about to break. Jimmy leaned forward, his eyes locked straight on Trump like he wasn't going to let this slide. The friendly host vibe from a minute ago had completely vanished. "Mr. President," he said, voice steady but direct, "why do so many people out there believe that Barron isn't Melania's biological son? The rumors have been everywhere for weeks. What do you say to that?" Trump's face flushed red almost instantly. He slammed his open hand down hard on the desk with a loud smack that made half the audience jump. "This is outrageous, Jimmy. You are being a disrespectful host tonight. We came here to talk about important things for this country, not this disgusting made-up garbage pushed by desperate Democrats and the fake news media." His voice boomed through the studio, louder than anyone expected. A few people in the front rows shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Ivanka sat right next to him, trying her best to keep her cool. She took a slow breath and spoke up, her tone measured and soft at first. "Our family is very close, Jimmy. These kinds of rumors are painful, and they're simply not true." But even as she said the words, her voice had a slight shake to it. You could hear the nervousness creeping in, like she was fighting to hold everything together. Jimmy didn't back off. He just gave a small nod, like he was expecting that reaction, and gestured toward the big screen behind them. "All right, then let's look at something specific. Maybe this will help clear things up." The screen lit up with a sharp, clear timeline photo. It showed Ivanka in New York City, smiling as she held a tiny Baron in her arms. The date stamp was right there, just 3 days after Melania was supposed to have given birth. Everything lined up in black and white, impossible to ignore. Trump's eyes narrowed the second he saw it. He leaned forward fast, pointing aggressively at the screen. "That is a doctored photo, Jimmy. Completely fake. They'll stop at nothing to attack my family. This is a total witch hunt, and you're playing right into it by showing this trash on your show." His voice rose even higher, full of frustration. The studio felt heavier now, like the air had thickened. Ivanka opened her mouth like she wanted to add something. Her lips moved for a split second, eyes flicking between Jimmy and her father, but she quickly swallowed whatever she was about to say and looked down at her hands. Trump noticed right away and jumped in to cut her off, placing a protective hand on her arm. "Don't even waste your breath on this, Ivanka. These people are just trying to smear us and create drama. We're not falling for it. Focus on real issues, not this nonsense." The tension kept climbing. You could see it in the way Trump's jaw stayed clenched, and how Ivanka's shoulders stayed tight, even though she tried to sit straight and composed. A few murmurs rippled through the audience, but nobody dared speak loud. Everyone was locked in, waiting to see what would crack next. Jimmy sat back in his chair, still calm on the outside, but his eyes showed he wasn't done. He looked at both of them for a long beat, then gave a small, steady smile that somehow made the moment feel even more intense. "We haven't even started yet, Mr. President," he said quietly, letting the words hang there. Jimmy sat there for a moment, letting the heavy silence from the last exchange settle over the studio. Then he slowly turned his chair toward Ivanka, his voice dropping lower and quieter, almost gentle, but deadly serious. "Ivanka," he said, looking her right in the eyes, "what is your real relationship with Baron?" The question landed like a bomb. Ivanka froze completely. For 3 long seconds she didn't move, didn't blink, her face going pale as her eyes started to glisten with tears she was clearly trying to hold back. The whole studio seemed to hold its breath with her. Trump exploded out of his seat. "We're done here," he roared, his voice loud and furious as he pushed himself up. "This interview is over. We're not sitting through this kind of garbage." He started to turn, like he was ready to walk off the stage right then and there, his face dark with anger. But before he could take a full step, Ivanka reached out fast and grabbed her father's arm, pulling him back down toward the couch. Her voice cracked wide open, raw and breaking in a way no one had ever heard from her in public before. "Dad, please," she said, the words trembling as they came out. It was the first time she had let her real emotion show like that on live television. No polished smile, no careful phrasing, just pure, shaky vulnerability. The audience gasped softly. Cameras caught every second of it. Trump stopped mid-motion, staring down at his daughter with a mix of shock and warning in his eyes. Jimmy didn't let the moment slip away. He picked up a small card from his desk and read out loud in a clear, steady voice, quoting directly from an old speech. "As Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett said just last month, the timeline doesn't add up. The dates, the photos, the stories, none of it lines up if you look closely." Trump spun back toward Jimmy, pointing a finger straight at him. "You are crossing a dangerous line, Jimmy. If you keep pushing this, I will sue you and your entire network before the show even ends tonight. This is defamation, pure and simple." His threat echoed through the studio, loud and sharp. Some people in the audience shifted nervously, but no one looked away. The air felt thicker than ever. Ivanka leaned in closer to Jimmy then, her voice dropping to a broken whisper that the microphone barely picked up. "He's my son." The words came out soft, almost desperate, like they had been trapped inside her for years. Trump cut her off instantly, his hand shooting out to grab her shoulder as he leaned in close. "That's enough, Ivanka. Don't say another word," he growled under his breath, but the mic still caught the edge in his voice. He tried to smile for the cameras, but it looked forced and tight. Jimmy let the heavy silence hang in the studio for a few more seconds. Then, without any dramatic music or big gestures, Jimmy reached under his desk and slowly pulled out a plain manila envelope. He held it up so the cameras could get a clear shot. "Mr. President, Ivanka," he said in a calm, steady voice, "these are copies of Barron's medical records from nearly 20 years ago." The room went completely still. You could hear people shifting in their seats and a few quiet gasps from the audience. Trump's eyes locked onto the envelope like it was poison. Ivanka's face lost all color as she stared at it. Jimmy opened the envelope carefully and laid the papers flat on the desk right in front of them. "Let me read you a couple of key parts," he continued. First line, mother's blood type, AB. "We all know from public medical information that Melania's blood type is O positive. That combination makes it medically impossible for Melania to be the biological mother." He paused to let the words sink in deep. The audience leaned forward even more. Then Jimmy kept reading in the same even tone. Doctor's handwritten note from the delivery room. Patient requested strict privacy. Biological mother was present at delivery and held the newborn immediately after birth. That was it. The truth bomb had just exploded in the middle of the studio. Murmurs and shocked whispers broke out everywhere. Some people in the audience pulled out their phones, filming or texting frantically. The energy in the room shifted from tense to electric in a heartbeat. Trump's face turned a deep, angry red. He shot up from the couch, pointing a thick finger directly at Jimmy. "You will be sued into oblivion tonight," he shouted, his voice shaking with pure rage. "This is illegal. These records are stolen, fabricated, or both. You have no right at all, to bring private medical documents onto live television and ambush my family like this." His hand trembled as he kept pointing, the veins on his forehead and neck bulging. "I will destroy you, this show, and your entire network. You'll regret this for the rest of your life, Jimmy. Mark my words right now." The threat echoed loudly through the studio. A few audience members looked nervous, but most stayed glued to the scene, eyes wide open. Trump was breathing hard, chest rising and falling fast, clearly losing the tight control he had tried to keep all night. Ivanka sat frozen for a long moment. Then she slowly reached out and picked up the papers with both hands. Her fingers were shaking badly as she held the documents closer. She read the blood type line once, then twice. Her eyes moved down to the doctor's note about the biological mother being present. Tears quickly filled her eyes, making them glossy and red. One tear slipped down her cheek and dropped onto the paper, smearing a bit of the ink. She tried to say something, anything, to push back, but no words came out. For the first time all night, she couldn't deny it. She couldn't defend the story they had always told. She just sat there, staring at the evidence, completely exposed. Trump noticed immediately and tried to snatch the papers away from her. "Don't look at that garbage, Ivanka," he said sharply, his voice still loud and urgent. "It's all fake. They're trying to destroy us. Put it down." But Ivanka held on to the documents tightly, her hands still trembling. She didn't fight him, but she didn't let go either. Her shoulders slumped just a little as another tear fell. The perfect, always composed daughter of the president was breaking down right there on national television, and millions of people were watching it happen live. Jimmy stayed calm through all of it. He watched them both carefully, then spoke again in that same measured tone. "We still have one more witness who is ready to come forward and explain everything in detail. We'll hear from them very soon." He didn't name the person yet. Instead, the big screen behind the guests suddenly lit up with a quick teaser image. A split screen showing former President Barack Obama on one side and Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett on the other. Bold text underneath read, "Next week, full testimony and more evidence." The audience let out a collective stunned breath. Some people actually whispered, "Oh my God," out loud. Trump opened his mouth like he was about to explode again, but Jimmy raised his hand slightly and gave a small nod to the control room. "We'll be right back after this short break." The studio lights dimmed just a touch as the show cut to commercial, but the heavy, shocked silence stayed thick in the air. No one clapped. No one laughed. Jimmy waited until the commercial break ended and the red on-air light came back on. The studio was still buzzing with nervous energy from the medical records. He looked straight at Trump and Ivanka, then pressed play on a small recorder sitting on his desk. A woman's voice filled the studio, clear, calm, and professional. "I was the nurse on duty in the delivery room that night," the voice said. "I have worked in that hospital for over 25 years. Mrs. Melania Trump was not present during the birth. She was not in the room at all. Miss Ivanka Trump was the one who held the baby first. She was the one who cried when Barron was born. I remember it clearly." The recording kept going for a few more seconds, describing details only someone who was really there would know. The audience sat frozen. A few people covered their mouths with their hands. Trump's face went from red to almost purple with rage. "That is a lie," he barked, the second the recording stopped. "That nurse signed an NDA. This is illegal. You're playing stolen, edited audio to destroy my family on live television." But Jimmy didn't argue. He just let the weight of the nurse's words hang in the air a little longer. Then the real breaking point came. Trump turned sharply toward his daughter, leaning in close so the microphone barely caught his words. His voice was low and urgent, almost a growl. "Don't say another word, Ivanka. Not one more word." Ivanka looked at her father for a long second, tears already streaming down her face. Then she slowly turned her head and looked straight into the main camera. Her voice came out soft but clear, cracking with emotion. "I never wanted to lie to the world," she said, the words trembling. "I never wanted any of this. But Barron, he deserves the truth." The studio went deathly quiet. Trump's eyes widened in shock and panic. He reached over and grabbed her arm, squeezing it. "Ivanka, stop. This is not the time." But she didn't stop right away. Tears kept falling as she sat there, shoulders shaking slightly, the perfect public image completely gone. Trump tried desperately to regain control. He turned back to Jimmy and the cameras, forcing a smile that looked more like a grimace. "Look, let me set the record straight once and for all," he said, his voice louder than necessary. "Melania gave birth to a beautiful, healthy boy. We have always been a close family. These attacks are coming from people who hate me and want to hurt my children. It's all fake news, folks. All of it." He kept talking, repeating the official story he had told for years. But every few sentences he would glance at Ivanka, waiting for her to nod or back him up. She didn't. She just sat there in silence, tears still rolling down her cheeks, staring at the floor. Her lack of agreement made Trump stumble over his words. He repeated himself twice, lost his place once, and his usual smooth confidence completely fell apart. The more he talked, the more obvious it became that even he knew the story was cracking. Jimmy waited until Trump ran out of steam, then slid one last photo across the desk. "One final piece of evidence," he said quietly. It was a clear, dated picture of Ivanka when she was about 7 months pregnant. Her baby bump was obvious under a fitted dress. Next to it, Jimmy placed a copy of Melania's official medical file from the same time period. The file clearly stated, "No pregnancy symptoms reported. Routine checkup normal." The contrast was brutal. Trump stared at the photo, his mouth opening and closing without sound for a moment. Ivanka looked at it too, then covered her face with both hands as fresh sobs shook her body. She was close to completely breaking down now, the weight of years of secrecy crashing down on her right there, on live TV. Trump quickly moved closer and put his arm around his daughter's shoulders, pulling her toward him in what was supposed to look like a protective fatherly hug. But his eyes told a different story. They were wide with real panic and fear, darting around the studio like he was searching for a way out. His usual swagger was gone. For the first time all night, Donald Trump looked truly shaken. The entire studio fell into a heavy, stunned silence. No one clapped. No one whispered. Even the crew behind the cameras seemed frozen. The only sounds were Ivanka's quiet crying and the faint hum of the studio lights. Then Jimmy looked directly into the camera, his voice calm but firm, as the tension in the studio reached its peak. Next week on the show, we will have former President Barack Obama and Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett here in person. They will present all the remaining evidence, including additional documents, timelines, and testimony that they say will finally put this story to rest. The announcement hit like a thunderclap. The audience erupted into loud gasps and murmurs. Phones lit up across the studio as people started texting and recording. Trump's face twisted with fury. He couldn't stay seated anymore. He shot up from the couch, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. Pointing straight at the main camera with a shaking finger, he shouted at the top of his lungs, "If you air any more of this garbage, I will destroy you and your entire network. You hear me, Jimmy? I will sue you into the ground and make sure this show never sees the light of day again." His voice boomed through the studio, raw and furious. Veins bulged on his forehead. For a moment, it looked like he might storm off the stage completely. But Ivanka quickly reached out and grabbed the back of his suit jacket, pulling him back with surprising strength. Her voice came out in a desperate whisper that the microphone still caught. "Dad, it's over. Please." Trump froze for a split second, staring down at her. The look on his face was pure panic, mixed with disbelief. Ivanka let go of his jacket. She turned slowly to face the camera head-on, tears still streaming down her cheeks, but her voice now steady and clear, despite the tremble. "Barron deserves the truth," she said, speaking directly to millions of viewers at home. "I deserve the truth. We have hidden this for too long. I'm done pretending." That single moment felt like the strongest unmasking of the entire night. The polished, always in control Ivanka Trump was laying everything bare on live television. The studio went completely silent, except for a few scattered claps and shocked whispers. Trump stood there, mouth slightly open, looking completely blindsided by his own daughter. He tried one last time to save the situation. Forcing that familiar confident smile he had used for years on camera, he turned back toward the audience and started to speak. "Folks, this is all just a big misunderstanding. My family is strong. We've been through worse than this. We will get through it together." But the smile looked fake and broken. It didn't land. Instead, the audience started reacting. First, a few people clapped, then more joined in. Soon, some began booing and shouting. The mix of applause and jeers grew louder, filling the studio with chaotic noise. Trump's smile faltered badly. He tried to wave it off, but the more he smiled, the worse it looked. His usual charm had completely failed him tonight. Ivanka stayed seated, head slightly bowed, still crying quietly. Trump put his hand on her shoulder again, but this time the gesture looked more like he was holding on for support than protecting her. His eyes darted around the studio, full of alarm and helplessness. Jimmy stood up slowly behind his desk, looking straight into the main camera with a serious expression. "This is only the beginning," he said clearly. "Next week, we go deeper." The lights in the studio began to dim gradually. The screen faded to black as a strong rhythmic heartbeat sound effect pulsed through the speakers. Thump, 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 growing louder until the final second. No closing music, no applause, just that heavy heartbeat and the image of Trump and Ivanka frozen in that raw, broken moment. The show ended right there, leaving the entire audience, both in the studio and watching at home, in complete shock. People sat stunned in their seats, whispering to each other, already wondering what would happen next week. The biggest scandal of the Trump family had just cracked wide open, and everyone knew this was far from over.